Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial. If you're new here in this channel, please do well to subscribe. If you're no subscriber, thank you for always coming back to watch videos and tutorials on this channel. So today we're going to be making this draped gown. I made this as a gown. You can make yours as a skirt because the skirt is also draped and the upper body is also draped. So if that's what you want to see, then you want to watch this video to the very end as we head straight into the tutorial. So come along with me and let's draft the pattern, okay? So this is the pattern, the basic front bodies. I've gone ahead to trace it out in full, and this is the sleeve. I'm labeling front and back, and I'm cutting from the center sleeve. I just went ahead to label center. So I'm cutting from the center sleeve, and I'm going ahead to attach the front of the sleeve to the front bodies like so, because we're going to be having that kind of kimono sleeve. Okay, we are going to having that kind of kimono sleeve. So I haven't done that. I've gone ahead to label left and right, just so I know where my drape is going to be more prominent, kind of. So I'm going ahead now to open up these darts and close them up, like we always do whenever we want to, slash and spread to create a design. We open the darts and we close them back. Then we start adding our style lines to slash and spread, okay? So I'm going ahead to do that right away. I'm closing up the darts like so. You can just, whatever method you want to use to close up your darts, you mustn't flip like I'm doing. Whatever method you feel you can use to close up your darts. So I've gone ahead to close up the two darts, and I'm going ahead now to draw in my style lines. This very part, you do what it is you want to do based on the design you want to create. Okay, there is no standard for this. You're doing what you want to do based on the design you want to create. So I'm just giving myself kind of guideline or guide mark, kind of inches that I'm supposed to follow to create the design. So I'm going ahead now to use my ruler to make the lines more prominent and visible so I can see where I'll be cutting my scissors through. I'm going ahead to draw in the lines like so, especially at the pivotal place of my dart, just to make sure that when I cut it, this pattern lays flat, like a flat pattern that it is. So I'm going ahead to cut, to slash and spread those lines, and as you can see, the pattern is laying flat, which is the way it's supposed to be because we are working with a flat pattern. So I'm going ahead to slash and spread like so, cutting all the way. As you can see, I'm going ahead to cut all the way, and I haven't done this now. I'll go ahead to add an additional paper just to make sure that I slash and spread this on that fresh pattern paper. So I've added the fresh pattern paper. I'm using a white paper just so you see clearly what I'm doing. I'm going ahead to use to slash and spread on this very particular paper. There is no measurement for the slash. The more you slash, remember, the more fuller you're going to be having your bodies. And because this is kind of, it's slightly free, it's not a very, like, it's not really a free top. It's a free top, but it's slightly free. It's not as free, it's not really that bogus. So I'm going ahead to kind of, I'm not slashing it very wide. This is the way it's going to be. So I'm going ahead to return this pattern to its original piece like so. I'm going ahead to return this pattern to the original way it was. And I'm going ahead to tape this down. We always do this on this channel whenever we are kind of creating designs that looks like so. So I'm going to have to do this. And you remember that very center point where we want our drape to be prominent on the lower and the upper bodies. I'm going ahead now to use my scissors to cut that place open. And having cut it open, I'll be adding an additional pattern paper underneath it, just so I have where I can pleat, kind of I can fold in to make my drapes or my pleats prominent at that very part, at the upper and the lower bodies like so. So I'm going to have to do that, and I'll go ahead to return the other side of the pattern to its original piece. So having done that, this is a kimono sleeve. When you're cutting on your pattern, you want to make sure that you kind of smoothen off that sleeve part that leads to the waistline. Okay, I'm going to have to open up this pattern the way it's going to be while we cut it on our fabric. I'm going to have to open it. I'm trying to make sure everything lays flat because we are working on a flat pattern. Okay, you don't want to have any bumpy areas. You want to make sure that everything lays flat. Okay, so I haven't done that. We'll head straight to cutting, to drafting of the skirt bodies, that's the lower bodies. So for the lower bodies, I've also labeled left and right, just so I know where my drape is going to be prominent. Also, since I did right for the upper bodies, I'm going to be doing right for the lower bodies. And from my bust apart measurement, which is the center of my dart, I'm drawing that line all the way down. So I'll go ahead now to open up my skirt darts, and I'll also close it back like so. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do well to subscribe. Leave a comment for your girl in the comment section, and I'll reply you as soon as possible, okay? I've gone ahead to close up the dart like so. Just like I said, you can make yours as a skirt only. You can make yours as a gown, just like I did, okay? So this is for the skirt. I'm going ahead now to draw in my lines for the drape of the skirt. So I'm kind of doing a freehand drawing like so, what it should look like. There is no exact way to draw in these drapes. Whatever design you want to create, that is the lines you're going to be drawing, okay? So I'm going ahead now to draw in the lines. And I've seen that the line of the right hand side is kind of higher. I want the sides of the drapes to be the same. So I've gone ahead to measure all the lines of the left hand drape, and I'm also marking the measurements on the right hand, just so I have a drape that is kind of uniform on the left and the right side seams like so. So I've gone ahead to do that, and I'll be cutting this skirt pattern open from that very bust apart measurement that we marked all the way to my dart like so. So I haven't done that. I'll go ahead to slash and spread this other part like so, and I'm cutting it open just like the normal way we do the slash and spread method. And I'm going ahead to add an additional paper to this. One thing you should understand, that draping is the same technique. Just make sure that you're getting your patterns right, and what you're doing, you're kind of making sure that what you're doing is in line. And also make sure that your style lines are exact with what you want to create. So I'm going to have to fold it, and the other part also I'll be slashing and spreading like same thing we did for the first one. So I'm going ahead now to slash and spread like so, adding on a fresh pattern paper underneath it, just so I can slash and spread it on that fresh pattern paper like so. And that is what I'm going ahead to do now. I'm slashing and spreading like so. More fresh patterns, just because the other one isn't enough, and I'm going ahead. That is what it looks like. So I'll go ahead to open it up to show you the way it's going to be before we cut it on our fabric like so. So heading over to the back pattern, I'm not going to be doing anything to the back pattern. I'll just have to eliminate the darts. As you can see from the picture, from the video at the beginning of this video, you saw that the back was fitted, okay? It's also, since it's also a kimono back, you want to consider also making sure that your sleeve, it aligns like a kimono sleeve, like so. So for the lower bodies of the back, we aren't doing anything to it. I'm only going to be taking off the dart because the back bodies is fitted. I'm going to have to cut it on the fabric, and we head straight to the sewing. So when you want to sew, you want to make sure that you mark every markable notch on your fabric. I always say this severally. Please make sure you mark your notches so that you do not get confused while sewing, okay? Because you're going to be having a lot happening, and you probably might not remember if you do not mark notches. So it's very advisable that you mark notches so that you remember where you're folding in and where you're not folding in, just so that you don't have troubles sewing the very particular fabric that you've cut. So this is what we are doing now. I'm going to have to sew up the draped part of the lower bodies, of the upper bodies, okay, at the waistline. I'm going to have to sew them up like so, using the very marks that I made. So I'm going ahead now to sew in the darts of my back bodies, the upper back bodies. I'm going to have to sew the darts like so. Please like this video and share to other sewing platforms where it will be needed. Also, I'm going to have to sew the darts of both of them. So considering my center front for my upper body's front, I'll go ahead to be joining it to the back. I'm also going to have to mark my waistline. Remember, your waistline is going to be fitted. Okay, so I'm going to have to mark my waistline, and I've joined that very place of the upper bodies. So heading straight to the lower bodies now, you want to also make sure you pin up all the draped parts like so. You want to make sure you pin up all the draped parts like so. So I'm going to head now to pin up all the draped parts, and having done that, we'll go ahead to be sewing all the way down. We'll go ahead to be sewing it all the way down like so. So I haven't sewn all the way down. You also want to do same thing to the other side. I'm gonna have to do same thing to the other side, and we'll be joining it together like so. So I'm going ahead now to join it together like so, making sure that those drapes lines align, like they are in uniform. Okay, making sure that the drapes lines align, they are in uniform. Okay, so I'm going ahead to sew all the way down to my hemline. So I haven't done that. This is what we're having now. This is what it looks like. So heading over to the back, to the lower back bodies, I'm going to sew in my dart, and I'll be shaping my side seam for the lower bodies of the front and the back before we join it to the upper bodies, okay, to form a gown. So I've already marked my measurement, and I'm going ahead to sew up my side seams like so, following the measurement that I marked, which is my actual measurement. So I'm going ahead to sew them all the way down like so. So I haven't done that. I'll go ahead to sew that off the other side. And I'm going to have to sew this that's formed the skirt. As you can see, it has an overlap slit at the back. And I'm going ahead now to join this together from the center front of the upper bodies and the center front of the lower bodies. I'm going ahead to sew from there, pinning them up first, making sure that every notch aligns, making sure that every seam aligns, just so it's in uniform and it looks good. Okay, so I'm going ahead now to pin everything up, making sure that every seam, every notch, whatever that needs to align, aligns, okay? I'm going ahead to make sure that all those align. I'll be using my pin to hold them up together. So I haven't done that. Having used my pin to hold them up together, I'll go ahead to sewing. And as you're sewing, you want to be careful with the pins so that it does not obstruct what you're sewing. You want to remove the pins where necessary. So I'm going ahead now to sew them all up together like so. So I'm going ahead to sew everything up. I'm going ahead to join the lower bodies and the upper bodies together to form a gown. So I'm going ahead to sew them, making sure that my pin not obstruct the sewing machine. You want to be very careful with this and making sure that your notches, everything align. So I'm going ahead to sew them all the way around like so. That's the way I sew, and I think that's the standard sewing method. You want to sew the lower bodies different, upper body is different, then you join them together before attaching your zipper, and all that. Okay, so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm sewing all the way around the waistline, okay, all the way around the waistline of the lower bodies and the upper bodies. So that's what I'm sewing right away like so, making sure that also the zipper allowance notches they align. So I haven't done that. I've gone ahead. As you can see, the darts are in line like so. As you can see, the darts are in line. And you want to also give this a good press. And having done that, I'll go ahead now to attach my zipper like so. I'm using an invisible zipper. So firstly, I'll be using a pin to hold this down in place at the zipper allowance area, and I'll be using the needle or pin, whatever it is you can use to hold it in place. And I haven't done that, I'll go ahead to open it up and I'll start sewing like so. This is actually a very simple tutorial. So long as you understand the drafting method of it, it's actually very easy, okay? And I'm going ahead to sew the zipper all the way down. I don't know what's wrong with my sewing machine. It's kind of giving me a headache, but I've got this and I'll use it for. So I'm going to have to sew all the way down my zipper. I'm going to have to sew all the way down. I also have several videos where invisible zipper, I'm trying to like open it up. I'm trying to open up the zipper. That's what I'm doing. I open up the zipper and I sew it all the way down. Okay, so I haven't done that. This is what we came up with. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next tutorial. Bye.